Turn the lights on for the Tyler Bright and Early podcast, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. And we're going to dive into week one here, but we'll also recap a little bit of week 0, and then we'll talk more college football, some games that I'm looking out for, and what really sticks out to me. And then I'll give my picks for those games that we'll be highlighting here today. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. You can listen to full episodes on Spotify. You can watch full episodes on YouTube. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. So, pulling back to week 0, obviously the main title card game was the Kansas State-Iowa State game over in Ireland. The Cyclones getting the 24-21 victory over the Wildcats, and kind of my takeaway from this game was just very sloppy. I know the weather had a little bit to do with it. The elements were hard with the rain, but it just kind of seemed like both teams weren't really as prepared as they maybe should have been for this game. I bet they both wish that they played this game in October, especially since it's a conference game. And I might have been a little bit too high on Kansas State because it just looked sloppy at times. You know, Avery Johnson went 21 for 30, 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rocco Beck, 183 on 14 of 28 attempts, going 14 for 28 attempts, and 2 touchdowns as well. But yeah, just some key turnovers in this game when they didn't seem like they could have been preventable. Obviously, that's easy for me to say. I'm not the one playing out there on the field, but a lot of people were expecting Avery Johnson to take that next step. And it didn't look like he'd take much of a step after last season. Looks like it's going to be a little bit more of the same. And if that is, that's going to cost them some games. So maybe I was a little bit too high on Kansas State. As for Iowa State, this is a game that you need, especially in the Big 12 where there's a lot of parity. You get a tough win. You know, Kansas State's I think they're going to be a lot better once they kind of figure themselves out. But Iowa State in the win where they can. And Matt Campbell starting off 1-0. But yeah, that's other games that were happening in week 0. The Idaho State versus UNLV game. Idaho State giving UNLV a scare. You know, Dan Mullen in his first game, you know, it was a close game. You know, it was really close. The final score was 38-31 UNLV. And kind of a similar, I know it's a little bit of a transition going from Barry Odom, who was a defensive-oriented coach, to Dan Mullen, who was all about offense. But at the end of the day, they got the win. You know, it didn't matter if it was the most flashiest game, but they got the win. That's all that matters, you know. And it's a team effort, as he said. And if you want individual performances, you can go and play tennis, as Dan Mullen says. Fire quote, by the way. Fire. That's why he was so good as an analyst on ESPN. And now he's back where he belongs and thrives as a head coach. But obviously not thriving so much in this week 1 game. But they did get the win nonetheless. And, you know, I might have to retract what I said as them being the group of 5 team representing in the playoff. But, you know, it was an ambitious take. You know, I do think Anthony Calandra should be the starter. They did play 2 quarterbacks, so I think that was a little bit of an issue as well, alongside Alex Orji. But nonetheless, I think they'll come around. I think they'll come around. Sam Houston also played Western Kentucky. It was pretty close until Western Kentucky kind of ran away with it. Fresno State and Kansas. Kansas pretty much owned that game. They won 31-7. The Fresno State defense looked a little bit rough, but also I just think Kansas has more talent. How about Stanford and Hawaii? The Rainbow Warriors getting the win, getting the walk-off win, 23-20. How about those Rainbow Warriors? If you haven't heard about the story of their kicker, look into that. Like, find that story, give it a read, give it a listen, give it a watch if it's on YouTube. But just a great story. But Stanford, yikes. Are they going to win a game? I don't think they're going to win a game. I really don't. If they were going to win a game, it was this one. But I'm looking good on that under. I'm looking good on that under for sure. But yeah, yikes. But yeah, that's kind of what happened in week 0. Before we go into week 1, let's talk about Fox Sports and YouTube TV. What's going on? Why are we having contract negotiations? You know, we got to do what's right for the consumer. We got to do what's right for the fans. You know, it's just brutal timing. You know, only a few days before the primetime game might be the game of the season with Texas and Ohio State on Fox. Like, that might be the game of the year. It's probably not going to be, but that's usually the case when you have number 1 versus number 3. That's a primetime game. And it's tough, especially like why can't these negotiations happen in the spring? Why can't it happen in May? Especially since Fox, all they really have is I'm sure they have other stuff, but baseball, but they don't have basketball, they don't have March Madness, they could do it in the spring. They could do it in the spring. But no, they have to do negotiations in the fall. I get it. It's above my pay grade, but I don't have YouTube TV, so it's not much of an issue with me, but do what's right with the fans and right the wrongs, get this contract figured out. I think they have sort of for at least a period of time. I don't think they came to a main conclusion or an agreement officially, but I believe they may have it fixed for this weekend, but yeah, figure it out. But now let's take a look at some week 1 games, the ones that are going to stick out to me. Obviously, the Big Ten game of the week and the SEC game of the week are clashing against each other for Texas and Ohio State. And yeah, I just think it's going to be two really good teams. Ohio State coming off a national championship, Ryan Day, and the crowd's going to be rocking in Columbus. Evening game. I think, I just think Texas also has Arch Manning. This is going to be his first real test. It's going to be a top team in the country. How is he going to do in a road environment where he's starting, and how is he going to deal with the crowd, especially them going to be electrified and amped that the Longhorns up in the horseshoe. How's he going to deal with that? But I trust in Sarkisian's offense. I think Texas is going to come out with the win. I think it's going to be kind of a middle scoring game. I think Ohio State's going to get a few touchdowns. Julian saying, how is he going to do also as well? He's also in this kind of the same boat, becoming the starter for Ohio State. But I think Arch Manning, I think they're going to have a pretty good game. And I think it's going to be like a 28-24 kind of game. But I'm going with the Longhorns. Another game to look out for, Florida State and Alabama. Some might say that's a big game. I think Alabama's going to blow them out of the water. And yes, I know that game's in Tallahassee. And I do think Florida State's going to be improved. I do like Castellanos. I think he's an upgrade over DJU. But I think it's more so a test that Alabama's coming to play. I think Alabama, especially now that they have Ryan Grubb, Ryan Williams, Ty Simpson's going to be the starter for the Crimson Tide. I think they're just going to roll Tide in the first game. I think they're going to dominate. And yeah, they're going to send the Noles fans home a little bit unhappy, but it is what it is. The ACC game of the week is going to be Clemson versus LSU. There's a lot of ways this can go, but I think Clemson going to have a little bit more of a resurgence to dominance is what they've been, especially when they had Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, but Tom Allen coming over, and I think he's going to improve this defense. I think they're going to be a stouty defense. I think it's going to be a really good defense. Cade Klubnik coming back, of course. He's a veteran now at this point, and I think Clemson, even though they were a playoff team last season, don't get me wrong, but they kind of limped into the playoffs, losing to South Carolina, didn't really do much, but yeah, I think this is the year to kind of come back for redemption if you're Dabo Swinney. So, and LSU, Brian Kelly, I think they're going to be a good team this year, but I just think it's going to be tough in week 1 against Clemson. I'm going with Clemson. Going to be a little bit more high scoring. I'm going to guess about I'm going to say 35-28, probably, maybe a 35-31, but I'm going to lock it in for 35-28. For the Clemson Tigers. And I also really like their offense. Garrett Riley's kind of like spread pistol kind of offense. It's really creative, especially. My roommate plays a lot of the Clemson offensive playbook because there's a lot you can do with it. A lot of trickery in there, with some screen plays in there, He obviously didn't burn me on one. Anyway, moving along. Some other games, obviously, Tennessee versus Syracuse is another one that sticks out to me. It's a neutral site game in Atlanta, Georgia, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Both of those teams, I think they're going to regress here in this season. Tennessee was coming off a playoff appearance against Ohio State. They lost that game, of course, because Ohio State was the national champions. And Syracuse had the upset win against Miami last year. And I really like Fran Brown as a head coach, but they went 10-2. I don't think they're going to have as much success this season, but they're still going to be a pretty good team. I'm going to roll with Tennessee in week 1 just because there's a lot of Vol fans in Atlanta, and I think they're going to have that support down there. So I think they're going to get a win. It's going to be a little bit more low scoring. It's probably going to be 14-17 or 14-10. something along that lines. But other than that, you have the game on Sunday between Miami and Notre Dame. Carson Beck, the transfer quarterback, Notre Dame lost in the national title game. They have CJ Carr starting at quarterback, obviously the grandson of the Michigan head coach for a long time. Lloyd Carr won the national championship with the Wolverines and Brian Griese. I think Tom Brady was the backup quarterback at the time. But yeah, I'm interested to see how he's going to look for Notre Dame. And Carson Beck, this is a do or die year for him. You know, a lot of people were super high on Carson Beck, thought he was going to be a first round pick, and then he decides to stay back. Didn't have as much success last season with Georgia. He transfers, goes to Miami. Is he going to bounce back? Probably has a good shot too. But I do think they're going to lose in week one. And regardless of Carson Beck's performance, I just think Notre Dame's a better team than Miami. And I think that's going to be a little bit more spread out in the score. I think they're going to win 38-14 Notre Dame. So, but yeah, that's kind of all the games that I'm going to be touching on here in week one, of course, because you have a lot of games that are there are a lot of Power Four, Group of Five non-conference games. I mean, to be quite frank, it's the beginning of the year. You have these blue blood programs that are facing off against these Group of Five FCS teams, and they're just trying to get their paycheck, play the game so they can get blown out. It is what it is. That's just kind of college football. But those are some kind of games to look out for. But I will say this out of week one, and this will probably be my hot take of week one. A Power 5 school will lose to an FCS team. There, I said it. A Power 5 school, or a Power 4, I should say, is going to lose to an FCS school. And if you look at it, SEC's got Arkansas versus Alabama A&M, Florida versus LIU, and Vanderbilt versus Charleston Southern. The only game that I think that could potentially happen is Charleston Southern versus Vanderbilt. I'm not sure if Charleston Southern runs the if they're an option team. I don't think so. I don't think so. But no, that's Citadel, because that's an academy school. But I mean, they can potentially upset Vandy. In the Big Ten, you got Iowa versus Albany, I should say. Don't really know much about Albany, but Iowa has been upset by an FCS team before. You got Boston College versus Fordham. You got Louisville versus Eastern Kentucky. God forbid. No, they're not. I don't think they're going to lose that game. But Eastern Kentucky is a playoff team in the FCS, so you can't sleep on them. You got Pittsburgh versus Duquesne. Duquesne. Looks like it's a little inner pit action in the city of Pittsburgh. That's in the ACC. You got Iowa State versus South Dakota, and you got Kansas State versus North Dakota. So South Dakota and North Dakota, although they're not the prime teams in their state, they're not the state schools that do really well in the FCS, but maybe there's a shot there. You got Oklahoma's not in the Big 12 anymore. Silly me. But Oklahoma faces Illinois State. That's in the SEC. And then you got West Virginia versus Robert Morris. And then Texas Tech versus Arkansas Pine Bluff. None of those really stick out to me as losses, but moving along. I think when I did this, I'm going to be honest, I sorted these games in ChatGPT. And I think they still think that the Pac-12 exists and that Arizona State's in it. Shame on you and shame on me for using that resource. Anyway, I just needed to organize it. I'm sorry, you guys. But kind of the moral of that, I think maybe I will say this. My hot take is an FCS team is beating a Power 4 school. I'm writing it down. I'm locking it in. I wouldn't be shocked if an FCS team beats a Group of 5 team as well. But I think Vanderbilt, Charleston Southern, that can be an upset. I think Washington State versus Idaho, that could be an upset. Although Washington State's not exactly Power 4 anymore. Big 12. Maybe Iowa State coming off the high versus Kansas State. Maybe they lose to South Dakota. I don't really see that happening. But if the main one that's really looking out to me is Vanderbilt versus Charleston Southern. But even though I don't predict it, I think an FCS team. Even though I can't look at the schedule and just say, oh yeah, that team's going to win it. That's the beauty of the FCS. No one's going to predict them to win it unless it's just so lopsided, like an FCS team facing like Stanford. Then I actually think I would pick that game. But it's going to happen. Upsets happen, and you don't expect them. So FCS team knocking off a Power 4 team. Locking it in here. Hot take of week 1. Well, that's what I got in college football. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to take a look at my fantasy team. My fantasy team for not college football, for the NFL. I would love to do college football fantasy. I think that would be so fun. Now that I'm graduated, I can actually do that right now. But let's take a look at my team. So at quarterback, I got Patrick Mahomes. And no, I did not pick him in the first round. That would be silly of me. I actually picked him, I think, in like the 4th or 5th round. Don't really remember, but Patrick Mahomes is my quarterback. Got Breece Hall as my running back, and Josh Jacobs as my other running back, my RB2. Hall, maybe I overdrafted a little bit on him. I think I picked him in the 3rd round. Maybe a little bit of a high pick, but I do think he can produce, especially if like Justin Fields struggles and Aaron Glenn doesn't necessarily trust him. Maybe they pound the rock a little bit. My number 1 overall pick was Puka Nacua at wide receiver. By the way, this was a 12-man league, I believe. Yeah, it was 12. It was a 12-man league, and I picked 10th, so not an ideal spot. I got Garrett Wilson at my wide receiver position, which could kind of contradict my point that I said about if Hall what I said about Justin Fields struggling. Maybe he's productive and it's Garrett Wilson, then maybe that takes away points for Hall because they're passing the ball. But either way, got Garrett Wilson. Got Evan Ingram as my tight end. My flex is Chris Olave. I got the Eagles defense, and I got McLaughlin, the Tampa Bay kicker. That's my starting roster as of right now. On my bench, I got a couple guys in my bench, but I'm not really diving into the bench because they're the bench. If they need to step up to the plate and I see them doing well in practice for my team, then yeah, I'll promote them. I'll promote them into the starting lineup. You know how fantasy is. I got to right the ship. It's the Tyler Brighton early fantasy team. But yeah, that's what I got there. So so what's going on with me? So now that it's kind of that exciting time. There's these kind of times during the year where you're really noticing the atmosphere, and the atmosphere feels a little bit different. One of those is August, when everyone's back in school, getting back. Everyone's a lot more excited. They're excited to be back on campus. It's a little bit more populated. It's a lot more active on campus. Things are going around. Obviously, March Madness is another time of the year where everyone's getting excited, but football is back and people are excited. Now, giving my personal perspective, Louisville versus Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is not a team that you should sleep on, but Louisville, I think Louisville's going to do really well. I think Isaac Brown is going to be the star for this team this year. I like Miller Moss transferring over from USC coming over, but I think Isaac Brown's just going to be the star. He's going to be the star running back. I think he is. I think he's going to have a ton of yards. He might even be a potential Earl Campbell candidate for this team. You also have you have a really good receiving core. You got Colin Lacey. You have Chris Bell as well, just to name a few. You have the transfer from South Alabama. You got a couple of question marks on defense, but I think they're going to do really good. And how's Tayon Holloway going to do now that he's back with the Louisville team? Can be a little bit of a star. He's a playmaker. He had a block field goal. He was a great special teams player. And obviously you had the unfortunate scenario that happened in the Stanford game, but he's back, and I think he's going to have a great second chance, and I think he's going to thrive in it. So that's my take on the Louisville Cardinals. But now that I'm back, the good thing about college sports being back and, just being able to watch sports going on, that's not just baseball. And I love baseball, don't get me wrong, but now you got college soccer back. And speaking of that, this weekend, Saturday, August 30th, Colin Bellarmine men's soccer. Bellarmine will take on the Xavier Musketeers. I'll be doing play-by-play for that. So make sure to tune in. Tune in on ESPN Plus. You can catch Tyler Bright calling the game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Bellarmine, they're 0-1-1. They tied against Evansville in their first game, and that is a series that they have tied a lot in the previous years. They love tying against Evansville. I think they have 3 ties overall. And they played really good defensively against Kentucky until their defense just broke. I mean, they were playing defense the entire time. They're in their defending third for pretty much the entire second half of the game. But they had some moments, but Kentucky took advantage on a penalty kick against Bellarmine and was able to get the penalty kick. And that was that. But now they take on the Xavier Musketeers. So tune in for that if you want to watch me and support me. I would gladly enjoy it. And let's just talk some soccer. We're talking soccer. We're talking soccer. Speaking of soccer, Premier League soccer is back. I'm always cheering for AFC Bournemouth. The Bright family always cheering, always cheering for the Cherries. You know, they looked a little bit rough against Liverpool in their first game, but they got the win in their second game. So, and I think they're going to do more than just stay up in the Prem. I think they're going to be a competitive team. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got so far for here today. So a little bit of a shorter episode, but college football is back. And, it doesn't matter if they're not the most thrilling games. Obviously, you got some good ones in there. You got Texas, Ohio State, of course. But just be excited that college football is back. Everyone's just happy to head to these games, happy to support their teams, happy to be back in college sports mode. What's better than that? But yeah, that's going to do it for today's episode of the Tyler Bright and Early podcast, PBJ Productions' official flagship podcast for all things college football centered. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. As I mentioned, we are on Instagram, we are on X, TikTok, and Facebook. Listen to full episodes on Spotify and watch full episodes on YouTube. See ya.